morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. We are going to talk about 1099-S filings today on episode 51 of Saved You a Seat. This is the first Saved You a Seat of 2024, so thank you again for joining us. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and just go over some housekeeping. We do record these, and you will get a copy of the link to the recording a couple days from now. If you want to share it with any of your colleagues or use it for any trainings or just go back to review it, feel free. You can also ask questions throughout the webinar. We ask that you go ahead and just type them out in the questions feature, as all attendees are muted. We will try and get to as many questions as we can. And if by chance we don't get to your question, then we will go ahead and reach out offline to you, no problem. So with that, I think we will go ahead and get started. And Jessica, if you wouldn't mind moving the slide for me. It's a pretty exciting year here at SoftPro. We are celebrating 40 years, if you can believe it or not. And we just wanted to let you guys know that we're going to do giveaways, events, and raffles all throughout the year for our customers as appreciation and a thank you for making us successful for the last 40 years. If you'd like to be part of that celebration and have a chance to win some fun prizes and recognition, go ahead and go to softprocorp.com/40th anniversary and go ahead and follow the information there. You can log in, you can sign up, and we can celebrate throughout the year. And just a special thank you to all our customers for contributing to our success for the past 40 years. In other exciting news, if we go to the next slide, we are in what we like to call SPUG season, the SoftPro User Group Conference. And this is actually our 25th year of doing SPUG. So a big year for us, 40 years with the company, 25 years doing our SoftPro User Group Conference. This year, it's April 10th through April 12th at the Disney Yacht Club and Beach Resorts, obviously down in Disney in Florida. Registration is open now. If you are interested, just go to softprocorp.com/SPUG. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to anybody at SoftPro. We can get you to the right person. It is a great opportunity if you haven't come to not only learn, we have a bunch of hands-on learning sessions, but to network with other customers who are always willing and able to share some tips and tricks and things that they've done. It's a great community. It's a great learning experience. And we look forward to seeing those of you that are able to come and register. So again, it's softprocorp.com/SPUG, which stands for SoftPro User Group Conference. And it is in Disney, April 10th through April 12th. So with that, I think we are going to go ahead and get started today. And I am going to turn it over to Jessica, who is a trainer here at SoftPro and is kind enough to do webinars for us when it is definitely not my area of expertise. And she's going to take you through the 1099 submission process changes. And again, like I said, happy to answer any questions, which we'll monitor through the question feature. So Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thanks so much for helping us out.
Thank you, Leslie. Good morning, everybody. Like Leslie said, I am Jessica, and I'm a trainer here at SoftPro. And so what we're going to talk to you guys today about is 1099s. We're in that season of the year where we've got to submit those seller 1099s to the IRS. So here is a slide showing you what we're going to kind of talk about today. What are the benefits of what SoftPro can do for you to submit these 1099s? The module that we submit our 1099s through in SoftPro is called Pro 1099. So what can Pro 1099 do for us? It luckily allows us to manage an unlimited number of records. We're able to create the submission file and send it to the IRS. We can create the 1099 form that we have to give to our sellers. We can run reports and we can see if we're missing any of the important information the IRS requires. And the good news is that Pro Form and Pro 1099 are integrated. So we only have to enter this information one time. The two systems, the two modules work together and talk to each other. So we don't have to be entering this information in a bunch of different places on different websites or different programs. So that's what we're going to be going through today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what we need to look for, what we need to do in Proform, in our files, in our orders, and then how do we get that file to the IRS. So that's our goal for today. Before we get into that, I wanted to point this out. Currently for this year, this is a new thing in 2024. The IRS has changed some of their procedures. And even though we may have filed prior to 2023, 2024, as long as we've done it in the past and we've had a TCC code, unfortunately, we've got to reapply for it. To reapply for that code if you haven't already done so. So the expiration date was in August of 2023. So just in case, if you didn't know this, right, if I didn't hear about this and I haven't done it yet, I unfortunately am going to have to reapply for a TCC code. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to go to the IRS website, irs.gov, and you're going to have to fill out an application. So it doesn't matter if we have applied before or we've had a TCC before. Unfortunately, this is the first year they've changed that. So we are going to have to reapply. Once we get that done, the next thing we have to do is every year we have to update our system. So SoftPro will always every year send out an update, and it depends on if you are a standard Proform user, if you're an enterprise Proform user, or if you're a select Proform user. Every year we all have to update our system. So for those of us using standard or enterprise, you can get that update just by going to SoftPro 360. So you can log into your SoftPro 360 console and you can double click on your 1099 updater, and it'll be a very simple little wizard that pops up, and you just have to follow those screens and it will update your system so that you're ready to submit that file to the IRS. For those of us that are running SoftPro Select, if your system is saved locally, you're an on-premises user, you will need to make an appointment with our support team so that they can update your system. So just in case you haven't done that, all you need to do is call into our support number, which is 1-800-848-0143. You can also send an email to support@softprocorp.com just to schedule that appointment, and they will update your system. It will only take a few minutes, and then you're ready to go to create and submit your file to the IRS. For those of us that are on Select, but we are a hosted customer, the good news for you is your system's already updated. SoftPro's already done that in the background. They've pushed out the update, so you are good to go to create and send your file to the IRS. So there's going to be 5 steps to how we do this. So number 1, we have to make sure that our system is configured appropriately. We've got to have the right information, which we're going to look at here in a minute. Then we're going to run reports. We're going to run what's called our exception report. We're going to correct our files. We're going to correct our orders. We're going to make sure all that information is in there. It's correct. It's complete. We'll create the file, and then we're going to upload it to the IRS IRS Fire website. So how are we going to do this? So for those of us that are using SoftPro Select, in your orders, you're going to go into your order contact screen, and you're going to make sure that your seller has complete information. So we're going to look at our seller contact. We're going to make sure that we've got a complete name, we've got a complete forwarding address, we've got a complete social security number. We're also going to go into the escrow and closing section. We're going to go to our seller proceeds and 1099 data screen. We're going to make sure that this information is also complete. Did we give a 1099 to the seller? Did they sign it? Are they exempt? So this is all information that the IRS requires from us. So we're going to go through all of our orders, make sure that information is complete so that we can send that through the FIRE website. How do we know if our files are missing any of this important information? We can run a report. So we can go to the Pro 1099 module. We're going to click on our reports icon, and then we're going to double click to run our exceptions report. So this report will show us what we're missing, if we're missing anything. And we're going to choose the year, the tax reporting year that we want to run this by. So in our case, we're going to do 2023. If I have multiple TCCs or if I have multiple offices with different tax ID numbers or multiple profiles, we'll be able to narrow the report down by those different TCCs or TINs or profiles. And when we click OK, the report's going to show us if we're missing any information. It's going to give us the file number. This file is missing the social security number. This file is missing the address. So we are going to run this report and clean up. We're going to correct anything that it tells us we're missing. For those of us that use standard and enterprise, we're going to do a very similar thing. We're just going to do it a little bit differently. So in our Proform file, we're going to go to our seller contact screen. And again, we're going to make sure we've got all the complete information. We've got a complete seller name, a complete seller address. We want to also make sure our sellers have the correct type. Any sellers that we identify as a corporation, they are automatically exempt from 1099 reporting. So if we have a corporation, yes, we will mark them as that. If we don't have a corporation, you want to make sure to choose something else from this list. If the option that you need to choose is not there, your safety net, your go-to is other. So where do we put in the social security or tax ID number? We're going to click on the More button, and that's where we can put in the number, whether it be a personal social security number or whether it be a company tax ID number. We're also going to go to our CDF or HUD tab, and we're going to go to our proceeds and 1099 data screen, and we're going to make sure that we've identified that we have given a 1099 to the seller, they have signed it, or we're going to mark them as they're exempt. So that's what we need to do in our orders. We need to make sure this information is correct. And again, how do I know if I'm missing that information? We get to run a report. So for those of us using standard and enterprise, we'll open up Pro 1099. To get to that exceptions report, we're going to go to our reports menu, and we're going to choose exception report. We're going to run it for the tax year. So at this point, we're running it for 2023, and we can either do a print or a print preview. And this report will show us if we are missing any information. It will list for us the files in which we're missing information. So one extra step we need to do for those of us that use standard enterprise, we've got to export that information into Pro 1099. Those of us that use SoftPro Select, it happens automatically. For those of us that use standard enterprise, we've got to do an export. To do that export, we are going to either from our individual files, go to our file menu, choose export, export to Pro 1099. That's how our system creates the 1099 record. It'll let us know when it's done. It'll let us know if we're missing any information. It'll remind us that we should be looking at this just in case there's something that we didn't see. The other way that we can do this in standard and enterprise, other than individually, one by one, exporting our files from Proform to Pro 1099, the other way that we can do this is in Pro 1099, we can click our file menu and we can choose to import multiple files. We will choose those files by a date range. So for example, if I want to pull in everything from 2023, I would put in the date range of January 1 through 12/31 of 2023. I have the option to direct Pro 1099 to go to a certain place on my server, on my computer. It's an option, it's not required. I can leave that center field blank. Then I have the option to choose whether I include files that don't have any proceeds or whether I'm going to overwrite anything that was previously submitted before. Once I click OK, it will remind me that I didn't tell it where to go, but that's okay, it's an option. We can click yes here. And then it will let me know how many files it found. Those are the number of records that are going to get created. So once I click yes, it will now create those records. And it will let me know that this is a number of records we created. It reminds me, go run your report. If there were any problems, if there were any hiccups, you'll see this button that says View Import Error Log. So we can click on that and it will give us an explanation as to why the system couldn't create the record for this file or that file. And there's a bunch of different reasons as to why that may happen. Maybe my file is marked as a purchase, but it doesn't have a seller. Or maybe my file is marked as a refi, but it has a sales price in it. So if the system gets a little bit confused, it'll give you this error log so that you can read through this, you can print it out, and then we can go make those corrections. And if we're ready, we can just click Finish. We're going to run that exception report by going to Reports, Exception, 2023, and we're going to make sure all of these files, anything that shows up, we're going to make sure that these things have been cleared up. Once we run this report and it is clear, nothing gets listed, that's how we know we're ready to create the file we're going to send to the IRS. So just as a reminder, for those of us using Standard Enterprise, how do we run that report? In Pro 1099, we go to our Reports menu, we click Exceptions Report, and run it for the tax year. For those of us in Select, how do we run that report in Select? We go to the Pro 1099 ribbon, we click our Reports icon, we double click on Exceptions, and we run that for the current tax year. So in our case, we're reporting at this time for 2023. We click OK. It'll tell us if we're missing any information from our system. Once we correct the missing information, once we correct our errors, we run this report. When it's clear, that means we're ready to submit to the IRS. So I would like to stop just for a moment, just in case there's questions. Leslie, have you seen any questions coming in before we move on to the next step? Because this is the important part. So do we have any questions that we need to address?
Nope, not so far. You're covering everything great.
Okay. So once we get to the point where we've cleared this report, we don't need to fix anything else. How do we create the submission file? To create the submission file, if we are in SoftPro Select, we're going to go to the Pro 1099 module, and we're going to click Create Submission File. For those of us that are in Standard and Enterprise, we're going to go into a Pro 1099. We're going to go to our Tools menu, and we're going to choose Produce IRS Submission File. Before we do this, we've got to make sure our system is set up correctly. Our information needs to be in the system, so we need to just double check and make sure everything is still current. If I'm in SoftPro Standard or Enterprise, from that Tools menu, I can verify that information by clicking Transmitter Payer Information. This is going to be my company info, what my name and my address is, what my tax ID number is, what my TCC is. We've all got to reapply and get a new TCC. This is where that information gets entered. For those of us in SoftPro Select, where do we go to verify that information? We're going to go to SB Admin. We're going to click Configuration. And then we're going to go to our profiles. Depending on the number of profiles you have, we all have a different number of profiles. We will double click on our profile. Once that window opens up, we're going to click on 1099. This is where our name and our address and our phone number and our tax ID and TCC, this is where that information gets entered. So before we go to actually create the submission file, we just need to verify that this information is still good, it's still current. And then the next step is we're going to click on that Create Submission File button. So for those of us in Select, in the 1099 module, we're going to click Create Submission File. For those of us in Standard Enterprise, we're going to go to Pro 1099, and we're going to click Produce IRS Submission File. And then we're all going to kind of do the same thing from there. Once we choose that option, the next steps, the system's going to walk you through step by step of what the IRS needs to know. So this wizard will pop up, and you are essentially going to just kind of read the screen. It's going to give you all the information that you need to know. It's number one, going to remind you if you haven't updated your system, you've got to update your system. So this first screen will give you the current year. If it happens to be not this year, you need to cancel, you need to stop, and you need to either call SoftPro or go to 360 to update your system. So as long as it says 2023, then we're ready for the next step, and we'll hit next. Next, it's going to ask me for my TCC and my tax ID number. So again, we would have already put in that information like we just talked about. So it should pull in. You're just verifying that it's correct. You can put in your tax ID number, or you can leave it blank. If you have multiple tax ID numbers, but you have one TCC. And then you can hit next. Now it's going to again remind you what year are you filing for. As long as it says 2023, then that means you're good. You don't have to update your system. If it still says 2022, we have to cancel. We've got to either call SoftPro or go to 360, and we've got to update our system first. So my wizard says 2023. And the good news is that means I've updated. I'm ready to move on to the next step. There's also going to be an option where you can choose if you want to include any records where the seller received zero proceeds. That's going to be your choice. If you had a transaction like that through the year, you have a choice of whether you report that or if you don't. So that's what the checkbox there is for. And then we hit next. The next screen, it's going to ask us if we are filing a corrected return. If we had filed previously, something was wrong, the IRS contacted us and asked us to fix XYZ, then we have to create a corrected return. So as long as this is the first time you filed for 2023, we're going to stick with the option of no. This is an original first time file we're submitting. And then we hit next. The system's going to create a file that we are going to go to a website and upload. This screen is asking me, where do you want to save that file? So we're going to click Browse, and then we're going to choose the option of where on our computer we want to save that file. So it's up to you as to that place you choose. It could be on your server, it could be on your network, maybe you put it on your desktop. So that's your choice. I am going to pick my desktop, and then I'm going to click Next. This screen is reminding me that I need to keep these files. I need to keep this IRS submission file I'm creating for at least the next 3 years. So wherever I save that, it should be in a place where it's not going to get lost. So this is a reminder, and it's going to ask you to confirm that you understand that. So all we have to do is just hit yes, we got it, and then we hit next. This is again another reminder screen. If you hadn't cleared your exception report, do you understand that maybe you're going to get fined? Maybe you're going to get a penalty? Because our process is to make sure when we are ready to send this to the IRS, we hadn't had any exceptions. We had them, we fixed them. Now we're ready to send that file to the IRS. So this screen, all it's doing is just kind of asking you to confirm that. So you'll click yes if you've done that, and then you'll hit next. The last screen is it'll let you know it's done. We've created your file. Here's where it is. Now it's going to be our responsibility to go to the IRS website and then actually submit that to the IRS. SoftPro, all it does is it creates the file. Then we have to take a second step of going to the website and uploading it. So that's what this screen is reminding you of. It will ask you, do you want to go there right now? So if you want to go to that website right now, you're going to check the box, yes, take me to the website. But we can always go back to that website later. If I would like to visit that website later on, here in SoftPro Select on your 1099 ribbon, you're going to have a icon, Open IRS Fire Website. Anytime I click there, it will launch and take me to the website. For those of us that are using Standard and Enterprise, I'm going to have the same option. If I go to my Tools menu and I want to access that website later on, then I choose Access the Fire website. So unfortunately, that website is live, and so we can't practice sending a file, but so I can luckily show you guys some pictures and some screenshots of what the site is going to look like. So I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint. So when we go to that Fire website, the first thing you're going to do is on the left-hand side, you're going to see a link to log on. So we're going to click on log on. We have to have a username and a password. We set that up through the site. So if it's the first time that you've done it, it will create a new account for you. There's an option, create new account, if you don't know or haven't ever used it, you don't have a username, you don't have a password. If you've just forgotten your password, there's a link for forgot password. Once you log on, where do I go next? So once we log in, on the left-hand side, there'll be a link for the main menu. We're going to click there. Then we're going to click the link Send Information Returns. Once we click the link, Send Information Returns, it's going to ask us to type in our TCC and our tax ID number. So we're going to type in that information and we're going to then click Submit. The next screen will pull up our company information. That same transmitter information we saw in our system, we're also going to see that on the website. So we're just going to read through it and confirm that it's still good. And then we're going to click Accept at the bottom. Next, the site's going to ask us what we're filing. Are we filing an original first-time file? Are we filing a replacement or a correction? So if it's the first time that you have filed for 2023, we're going to click Original File. And we're going to browse, and we're going to go to wherever we saved that file that SoftPro created for us, and we're going to upload it. So what are the important dates? When do we need to do this by, right? So our deadline is April 1st. We've got to be ready to do this. We've got to go through this whole process prior to April 1st of 2024. The deadline, if you haven't submitted or provided your 1099s to your sellers, if you didn't give them a copy at closing, our deadline to do that, if we need to send them in the mail, that deadline is February 15th. As long as you provided that 1099 at closing with their copies, you've satisfied your duties. You've satisfied your responsibility. If you didn't give your sellers those copies, our deadline of when we need to mail those out is February 15th. The deadline for submitting electronically to the IRS is going to be April 1st. If we're not ready, we can ask the government for an extension. So the deadline for requesting a extension is going to be May 2nd. If we want to submit a test file, which you don't have to, it's just if you want to send them an example of what your records are going to look like, there is a deadline for that. That's going to be March 16th. We're not required to do a test file though. So these are the deadline dates that we all need to pay attention to. So if you have any questions other than this webinar, if you have any questions in the future, we've got lots of resources for you here at SoftPro that you can use to help you out. We've got our help website. Anytime that you are in SoftPro, all you need to do is hit F1 and it will launch you to our help website. And on that website, you're going to find videos and handouts that are going to walk you through this process of getting ready for and submitting your 1099s. Also on that website, you're going to find the link to our support team. You can give them a call, you can send them an email. So we at SoftPro, we're here to help you. We'll get you through this tax time. So we're always ready and willing to answer any questions.
And we do have questions. So if
Okay, perfect.
it's okay, we can run through some of these questions. Are you ready for me?
All right.
Okay, so the first one is, do we need to update the TCC in SoftPro profile? If we have to file a correction from previous years, do we still use the new TCC?
So that's a good question. And unfortunately, that's a question for the IRS. I'm not sure because this is a new thing. We're all in the same boat here. This is a new thing that they just started this year. So I'm not sure. But if you are wondering that, irs.gov is where we can go look up information, or we can call the IRS and get that answer.
Okay, great. Next one is for a non-select or for select non-hosted. Do you need access to the SQL server or just need somebody with admin access?
To update, so neither actually. So you can, one person, whoever's going to be the person that is going to file, right, create and file this file to the IRS. That's the only computer that we need to run the update on. And it's very simple. You go to either the 360 console or support can do it for you. It only needs to be on one person's computer. And no, you do not, depending on your IT setup, but normally, no, you don't need admin access.
Okay. And this might be similar to what the other question was, but it says, will we need to update the TCC in SoftPro to be the new number issued for 2023 reporting?
Yes, once we get that new number, we'll have to update our system.
Okay, great. Next one is, please confirm that the exception report will never be completely clear.
Well, so that depends, right? So there's going to be some scenarios where possibly there's one straggler that's still on there. For those of us in standard and enterprise, there are those little pesky things called name exceptions. And yes, even though we correct those, they never go away. So unfortunately, for those of us using standard enterprise, even though we correct those name exceptions, they're not going to go away. What we need to be concerned about are the missing information exceptions. Are we missing a social? Are we missing an address? So those of us in select, luckily, don't have to worry about the name exceptions. It doesn't happen in that version. It only happens in standard enterprise. And so, yes, that's true. They're not going to necessarily always clear. We just go through the report and make the corrections.
Okay. And then someone said they have a question about an estate as a seller. If the seller is listed as estate of John Smith, the name exception comes up saying it may be an error and has the name control as an ESTA. Should they be changing that?
No, because you have it in there correctly. The system, unfortunately, it's smart, but it's not that smart. So it doesn't recognize it. What it's looking for, the reason you see that exception, what the system is looking for is a very specific format. It's looking for the format of last name, comma, first. And anytime we do anything besides that, we get the name exception. Now, we know it's correct. Estate of John Smith is fine. The IRS, it's fine. It's just the way SoftPro works, unfortunately. It's looking for that other specific format, but we are good as long as we know it's spelled right and it's the right name, and that's who our seller was.
Great. Okay. This person asks, it says, didn't we reapply last year for a new TCC? Are we having to reapply this year?
Good question. My awareness is that this is a new thing just for this year. I have not known of or heard anything about them doing this last year. So if your company applied for a TCC last year, well, unfortunately, I guess you got it in there at the end when they've changed their process. So it's an IRS thing. Unfortunately, it's not a SoftPro thing, and we don't have control over it. But no, I hadn't ever heard of them doing this last year.
Okay. And then the next one is, on files that the seller could use the primary residence exempt form, do we need to still report the person as exempt?
So to report someone as exempt, they have to meet certain qualifications. And we have a document called the exceptions form. If you guys know from your closings, and it's the same in any version, that exception form, if I pull it up for you, has those true false questions. So technically, how can we or why can we report someone as exempt? They have to meet those qualifications. Here we go, tax forms, 1099s. So depending on how your seller can answer, whoopsie, let's move it here. Let's try this. Depending on how that your seller answered those questions, that's how we determine whether we can report them as exempt or non-exempt. So to kind of answer your question, if we're ever unsure, this is when we can consult the IRS or we can consult a tax attorney. It's all dependent. There's all kinds of different factors other than just these questions of if we report or if we don't. So the short answer is if the seller can answer true to all these questions on this form, then we're allowed to report them as exempt. If there's a gray area, if we're in an area, well, it could be, it doesn't, we've got to call the IRS, we've got to consult an attorney, we're not sure.
Okay. This one, it says, when the exception report flags a name that cannot be cleared, then what happens?
So the name exceptions?
Yes.
So yes, unfortunately, in standard and enterprise, those name exceptions are never going to be removed from your report. All we need to do, so if I go back to Approach 99 and run my report, what we need to do is we just need to look at those name exceptions. We need to make sure that they're correct. So I actually have an example. If you give me guys a second, I'm going to pull up another example for you of how we clear or how we handle these exceptions. So give me 1 second, because I've got a little kind of a table, right? When do we have to care? When do we not care? So let me pull that up. So here's some examples. If I'm looking at that report and if it's a corporation, well, the problem is I didn't mark them as a corporation in the file. Corporations aren't supposed to be on your name exceptions report because corporations are exempt. But if it's an LLC, if it's an estate, if it's a trust, and they're showing up on that report, there could be one of two problems. One problem could be I never changed their type from male to who or what they actually are. So I have to do that in the file, re-export to Approach 99. But then if they are showing up as ABC Builders LLC and they are marked as a corporation or an LLC or a partnership or an estate, the system still recognizes that as a problem because it's not following that very specific format of last name, comma, first name. I don't have to make any corrections on my end. I can ignore that kind of name exception on my report. So we kind of have these examples. What does my file look like versus what does my record look like? If in your file your seller is We Sell Homes LLC, what should my record look like? It should look the same way. Same with your estates. In your file, it should say, the estate of John Smith or the John Smith estate. What should your record look like? Same thing. What's going to be different are your individuals. In the file, we type John James Smith, but what does the record look like? Smith, comma, John. So those are the differences. So yes, some of those name exceptions show up even though we don't want them to, and they shouldn't. We know we've done it right, but the system is looking for that very specific format of last name, comma, first. Somebody like John James Smith is going to show up on my report because he's not following that very specific format. We don't have to make any corrections. Those aren't what we have to worry about clearing in terms of being ready to submit to the IRS. We look at them, we say yes or no, looks good, doesn't look good. We make any corrections if it's wrong. And then unfortunately, those don't fall off the report. And this is only for standard enterprise. Those of us in select, this is not anything that we have to worry about over there. So if anyone's getting nervous, don't worry about it if you're in SoftPro Select. Unfortunately, for those of us in standard enterprise, that's the way that report works.
Okay, great. Someone asked, should I report different companies one at a time or all my companies at once?
So if you have separate companies, separate tax ID numbers, separate TCCs, SoftPro support's going to have to help you. You're going to have to do what's called a database split if you have to create more than one submission file. So every company is a little bit different in how you've set up your company. Some of us just have one, some of us have difference, right? We've got multiples. So if you need to create and submit separate IRS files, SoftPro support can help you with that. You can call them, make an appointment, and they can do what's called a database split so that you're able to create multiple submission files if that's the way that your company is structured. Everybody's different. It just depends.
Okay, so this one is specific to proceeds. So if the sellers are splitting net proceeds, it says, I know how to do that for 1099 allocation, but what if one of the sellers is just taking like a preset amount of the net proceeds, not a percentage? So example, if the purchase price is 150, the ex-wife is taking say 27,552, and the husband's taking the balance, they're thinking they can just split it on the 1099 screen 13. Can they, but what if it's not doing a percentage? How do you split the property taxes allocation?
Okay. So let's take a look. And this is going to be something that applies to all of us, whether we're in select or standard enterprise. When we look at that seller proceeds 1099 screen, the system will, by default, assume when we have multiple sellers that they're doing an even split. If I move to, let's say, this file where I've got two sellers, it will assume they're going to split that evenly. You can always change that. So for example, in this file, I've changed it to 80-20. When we look at that seller proceeds and 1099 data screen, what gets reported is not the money that they're making on that day. What the IRS, all they care about is what was the price of said property and who's responsible, not who got, but who's responsible for X amount versus Y amount. So it reports your gross proceeds, not your net proceeds. And if your seller is asking you, I want this check here and I want that check there, that's a different animal than what the IRS cares about. And we're dealing with the government here. They don't get to tell us how we report to the IRS. We report. All we're doing is saying, hi, this person sold this property for this amount of money. All the semantics, all the other stuff is not our responsibility. All we're doing is just saying this property was sold at this address for this amount of money. What that seller pays or how or all that stuff that's the government's problem, not our problem.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to answer one here. Several people asked if there were handouts available, and like I mentioned early on, we are going to provide a link to this recording in a follow-up email, and so you can utilize that, or you can do screenshots, or as mentioned in the presentation, you can go to softprocorp.com or reach out, and there's lots of 1099 resources that you can utilize there. So
yes, so anytime that you're in, real quick, so anytime that you guys are in SoftPro, all you've got to do is on your keyboard, hit the F1 function key, and it launches our help website. So when it lands you here, you can click on the Pro 1099 link, and that's where you'll find videos and then handouts on the right. So this information's available 24/7 whenever you want it or need it. This information's on our help website, which you can get to with the F1 function key.
Okay, someone asked, can a 1099 be submitted without a signed copy?
To the IRS, yes. So we don't actually send them, we send them an electronic file. We don't actually send them the signed versions. That's just for our file. The IRS, we do this electronically. They get an electronic version of the 1099, they don't get the signed copy. So yes, that's okay.
Okay. And then someone said, is it required for us to offer the 1099 exemption form to sellers?
Are we required? No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Not
But
everybody
it's
does
kind
it.
of, you do it so that you know who's exempt and not, but it is definitely not required.
Hmm.
Okay. Someone says, does SoftPro have an integration with a TIN matching program?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, same. Not that I'm aware of either. It says, so if they're exempt, we still need to pull them over to the 1099 report and report them as exempt. We can't just leave them off the report, correct?
So the system does that automatically. The system
Yeah.
will send them as an exempt seller. So, the system will just do that. We don't have to delete them or remove them. They'll just be sent as this person qualified to be exempt.
And I'm not sure if this is something we would answer or if they just need to rely on their accountant, but I'm just going to ask you. It says our CPA said she will need to do our e-filing through the IRIS, and not IRS fire. Is this correct? And if so, will we still generate the right reporting for IRAS? We are on select.
So yeah, this is that new thing. So all of a sudden this year, there's the IRS Fire website, and now all of a sudden there's this new thing, the IRIS.
Right.
So that's that new TCC requirement. So yes, it is different websites, but all we got to do is reapply and fill out what it asks us for. And yes, it does ask you to put in, who you are and who your company is. And so everybody's got to do this. We're all in the same boat. We've all got to do this. But that's what the difference is. Like, it's a new thing just for this year. It's not related to SoftPro at all. It's the IRS. They changed their process. So we just go to irs.gov and we fill in whatever the information is that they're asking us for. It's going to ask you for your company information, um, tax ID number, those kind of things. But if you run into any kind of issues or questions or problems, unfortunately, we really can't help. We would love to, but it's not our thing. So unfortunately, you're going to have to go to the IRS with any questions, problems, issues. We would love to help, but we can't. It's not SoftPro that changed it. It's the IRS.
Yeah, and there were a couple questions I didn't ask, and they all pertain to the TCC, the date
Yeah,
cutoffs
yeah.
and whatnot. And honestly, I'll just speak, I'll just answer. There's nothing, we really can't assist with that. That's just, when you go to the IRS website, it's front and
We
center.
wish we
And
could. We wish we
it'll
could.
walk you through what you need to do. It'll give you the dates, it'll give you the information. And so I'm not just skipping over your questions. There's just nothing that SoftPro can do to help with that.
Yeah.
So one last question, and I promise we'll let you go, but this is a good one. We have someone who is transitioning out of a previous escrow system into SoftPro, and will they be able to submit two original filings to the IRS, one for SoftPro, one for the other escrow system? And I know that all of your SoftPro files will obviously pull from the 1099, and Jessica, I'll let you answer this, whether or not they need to do a separate one or if they want to manually enter it into SoftPro's 1099 for the previous ones. I don't know what you've seen as the best option for that.
Yeah, it's like we wish we could combine from two different systems. Yeah, so unfortunately, if halfway through the year, whatever time of the year you switched from using one program to using SoftPro. So yeah, for this 1 year, you're going to have to report the part of the year you weren't using SoftPro, however you used to do that. And then for the part of the year that you are using SoftPro, yes, you can do what we talked about, using Pro 1099s, creating the file. So yes, unfortunately, you're going to have to do two separate submission files just because you're using two separate systems. But then the good news is next year you only have to do one.
Exactly. It'll be much easier.
Yeah.
And again, I just want to reiterate, I definitely wasn't ignoring questions. We had a lot of them with the TCC and the dates and applying. And that if individual account versus whatnot, there's nothing from a SoftPro perspective that we can help with that. We wish we could, but the IRS, it's very, I don't want to say it's easy, but it is very easy, and walk you through it. And they have a helpline and whatnot that you can certainly work with them as well. So with that, I just want to remind everybody about we will send a copy of this recording so that you have the access to this and can review it. And we have endless resources at SoftPro. Just reach out. If by chance you had a question that I missed that you want an answer to, feel free to email us. And again, I do want to remind everybody about the SoftPro User Group Conference in April down at the Disney Yacht Club. Registration is still open for a little bit longer, and it is a great time. It is extremely educational. The networking is top notch. And so we selfishly love to get as many customers there because we get a chance to meet them face to face and help them with any issues. There is also one-on-one sessions with reports people, documents people, configuration people. So it's really meant for a lot of immersive hands-on learning. So if it's something you're interested in or you have any questions, either go to softprocorp.com to register or reach out to us and we're happy to answer any questions. So I want to say thank you to Jessica for doing this for us, and I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us on our first Saved You a Seat for the year, and we look forward to our next one and meeting with you all hopefully at the user group. Thanks everyone. Have a great week.
Thank you, everybody.